Thank you. You promised to ask the first two questions.
That's why I'm leaving to think about it.
No, but right at the beginning.
Okay, I'll start off. The government now is a government in its last stages, in the sense that it has 2 years left in office. There's tremendous pressure outside of Nicaragua, as indeed there is pressure from inside Nicaragua, to prepare for the next elections. How do you view the next elections and the future of the Sandinista party?
I think that the future of the party depends not so much on the next elections, but the future of the party, of the Sandinista. Can you hear me? Is this on? This is on, but it doesn't... Huh? Oh, this is only for recording. Oh. Okay, so I'm going to... I was speaking not so loud because I thought that this was... Okay.
You have to project it.
You know, I was one of a very few people a year and a half ago in Nicaragua saying that it was indispensable to convene as soon as possible an extraordinary Congress of the party. Because already then it became evident to me that the Frente Sandinista had to get out of the modality of opposition that it was exercising as an opposition party, that it was being extremely patient because of many reasons that we won't go into now. But I think it was a very mild opposition to the government. And I felt that it had quickly to move out of that because it was running the risk of alienating the majority of the people in the grassroots, the Sandinistas at the grassroots level, at least even the Sandinistas, not only the rest of the people. And I felt that an extraordinary Congress was necessary because I believed that already a year and a half ago, the members of the Sandinista Assembly, maybe I have to explain to you what is the Congress and what is the Assembly. The supreme body of the Frente is called the Congress. Let's say we're some 600 people. The Congress is the Sandinista Congress. But they meet only every 3 years. They meet necessarily every 3 years, but they can meet extraordinarily more often as needed. But it's quite an operation to get together all those people. And then we have the Sandinista Assembly. Sandinista Assembly, this is only 100 and some people, 110. And they meet like 3 or 4 times a year, and sometimes more often. And under that, you have the National Directorate. This is in order of importance. This is the most important. Then this, and then the National Directorate, which is like the executive that carries out day to day the doings of the Frente. And the National Directorate, if you want, was the one that was carrying out a policy of opposition that was very mild and that was being repudiated by the people who were saying, look, you are co-governing. You have gone in cahoots with the government and you have abandoned the cause of the poor. I think it was wrong. There were reasons why the National Directorate was really going slowly in putting the pressure on the government. But the perception was that the Frente was no longer the defender of the rights of the poor. And there are some members in there, especially Daniel Ortega, who fully agreed. And he wanted to change this. But if he changed that on his own, then they would say, here again go the hotheads, the extremists of the Frente, doing what they believe without a clear democratic mandate. And so I felt, where are you going to get that mandate from? From here or from here? Well, you could go here to the assembly I was very frightened of the assembly because the correlation of forces within the Sandinista assembly is like 50-50. Middle, upper class, professionals, people with some amount of wealth are like 50%, which is not representative of the party. In other words, these people have a greater representation in the Sandinista assembly than the representation at the grassroots, and only about half of this really is more like the majority of our people. Whereas the correlation in the Congress, I believed, in other words, that if we bring the issue of whether we should continue to hold a very mild opposition line, that in the eyes of the people there's no opposition but what they call co-government, that if we submit this to a vote, this Sandinista Assembly would say to continue such as we were the first 2.5 years. And the other alternative was for Daniel then to do it alone. But then that would cause a split, I felt. So the best is to call for the Congress and submit it to the Congress. And that Congress is going to be held in 2 weeks. Many people at the beginning were saying that there was no need at all for the Congress, but now everyone in Nicaragua and around Nicaragua are waiting to see what is going to happen, what is going to happen in that Congress. And at any rate, from the future of the Frente depends on what happens in that Congress. The destruction of the Frente will be if the majority there buys the line that we must continue with the opposition with the same militancy or strength that we have been doing it up to now. I hope and I believe what's going to happen is that line will lose out, and that the majority line would be for clear positions on the side of the rights of the poor in order to really force the president. The poor president, she's in a very difficult predicament because it's pressure from the United States, from even now, not to the same degree than she was before, but even now, there's some pressure from the states, and if not from the White House, from some southern Republicans that still exercise influence. She has pressure from the right in Nicaragua, and then she has pressure from the people. And so the only hope is to get the people so organized that their pressure would be the one that is most felt and the one that is heeded, because you cannot serve all these masters at the same time. You have to choose who you are going to go with. You cannot hope to continue pleasing everyone because you end up pleasing no one. And so, but the other thing that we're going to be talking about in a couple of weeks when we meet for the Extraordinary Congress is how far do we push? And I would believe, for example, that once we decide to push, we push all the way no matter what. You cannot be supporting the people in the struggle and then just when they come towards the end, throw cold water. And so this is why Comandante Ortega said on the 19th of July last that he believed that the Frente should be with the people all the way, and not that we want Mrs. Chamorro to fall, but if she falls, he said, she falls. Because our commitment cannot continue to be with keeping her in office. She's got to stand on her own. Up to now, the Frente Sandinista, to a large extent, has been the one that has kept her in office, because we believe that it was important for the country and for the consolidation of the new democracy that we have because of what happened in 1979. This is our creation. They would have never brought this democracy if it wasn't for the Frente. Somoza would still be there. But at any rate, so the future of the Frente depends on this very transcendentally important Congress that will be held from the 20th to the 23rd of May. Now, there are some people who are saying that what we should be, for example, my concern is keep authenticity, continue to be who we are. And I think this is also indispensable for the maintenance of some amount of peace in Nicaragua and some amount of order. I believe that if the people, the masses, come to the conclusion that the Frente is not the organization that defends them, they will discard the Frente, and rightly so. But then you will have chaos, and the Frente will not even have the capacity to influence for the good, because we would have no moral authority. So I think it's absolutely indispensable for us to clearly transmit through our positions, through our actions, the message of who we really are and what we stand for. But other people are saying, look, the most important thing now is not that. The most important thing is to be elected into office in the next election. They say we are a political party, and the reason for being of political parties is being elected. That is what is being said by the other current. The current that at this point in time is led by Sergio Ramírez Mercado, the man who was vice president. When Daniel was president, he was vice president. And Daniel says to that, oh yeah, being elected is important, but it's not the most important. If you are concerned with being elected and regard that as the single most important thing, then you can almost accept that anything is valid if it is to get you elected, but then even killing the Frente by diluting it so much in order to be accepted by the right that is now back from Miami, and all of these people who are now back and very active in Nicaraguan affairs. Now, looking at it from another perspective, you say, what will happen in the next election? Are the people sufficiently alienated from this government to vote against them, or does this discontent necessarily and automatically translate into support for the Frente Sandinista? If that is so, it's not very clear that it is so. A year ago, I would say definitely no. That discontent with Doña Violeta does not necessarily mean that if there was an election a year ago, people would have voted for the Frente. Even now, I'm not sure that follows. There's still fear of what would happen. What would the American reaction be? You can argue that you have Clinton, that there's a different administration, but people have every legitimate right to fear, because the United States hasn't changed. We have been invaded, and we have suffered all kinds of, with Democrats in office and with Republicans. And our nightmare did not begin with Reagan. It's the history of Nicaragua. It's the history of being intervened and of suffering aggression and every kind of thing from the States since our independence from Spain, beginning with the experience with William Walker in the middle of last century. So the only thing I can tell you with regard to that is I think there is a trend in that direction, and that maybe in the next 2 years, if that trend develops more and more, it would mean that the Frente might be elected. There's another candidacy in Nicaragua that is being supported even from powerful interest outside Nicaragua as a possible next head of state. His name is Arnoldo Alemán, a fascist mayor of Managua. And I think many of you already have heard, you know who he is. But now, I think that his chances are very quickly fading because of the fact that there are clear accusations of fraud and stealing in great quantities and all kinds of scandals of this nature that are going to result in, I think, in his leaving office, being thrown out, and maybe going to jail in the very near future. So much so that even the Liberal Party has said now that even if that didn't happen, the scandal has already done so much damage that they would not want to go with him. But so Now, the difficult thing that is happening in Nicaragua, and the sad and the lamentable things, is the attitude that Sergio Ramirez is assuming. Because Sergio Ramirez would like to be the candidate for the presidency, and that part is all right. But in order to enhance his chances, he is trying to characterize Daniel Ortega and the people who are not following Sergio as adventurers who would necessarily provoke the animosity of the United States, because in fact, what we want, we are committed to maintaining forever, he says, a relationship of enemies with the United States. And but the future of that line of attack will be decided in the next extraordinary Congress. Sergio Ramirez has some 15 candidates that he is presenting through his organization to be the new national director, because there will be a new national director in 3 weeks' time. And there will be a new assembly. This is the only thing that cannot change. And Sergio has a list of people. And it looks now that I would not be so surprised if he didn't even get one of the 15. Just before I took the plane to come here, I got a report that he had said that if he did not at least get 5 in here, that they would not accept any office of responsibility in any part of the Sandinista structure. I would believe even that if that happened, that he would resign from the party. I believe that he has been wanting to resign already for a long time, and that he did not resign because he thought he would be elected. They have a huge campaign, but from what is happening and the results that we have from local municipal assemblies and departmental assemblies that take place in preparation for the National Congress that will be held in May, other people's names are coming up. And they are all people much more identified with the line that I am defending, of more clearly standing in defense of the interest of the poor. In fact, when I go back to Nicaragua on Wednesday, I will know pretty much who the candidates will be because now we never used to talk that way before, but now they're talking about within the Frente Sandinista more left, and then the Sergio brand. So they're talking because of the emergence of this new group. Now they're talking about the left. I thought the Frente was left, but now they're talking that way. Say a prayer that I don't get elected into anything, because there is a great likelihood that I will. A couple of weeks ago, the women's organization had their Congress, and I got to report. We met one evening to hear about the different things that were going on, and they said, the representative of the women stood up and says, well, we have our list of people that the women want to support, and they had the X number of women, and then they were the men, and I was one of them. And I told them, please, to get my name out, and they said that they were not coming to ask what we wanted. They came to inform what they wanted. And then, to make things worse, there was a representative of the labor unions who seconded the women, and then the people from a town called Masaya did the same thing. And anyway, so I was very happy and thankful to God that I came up here now. I came here because I was invited by CCCC. Do you understand those 4 C's? Canadian Catholics Concerned About Their Church. They invited me to be with them over this weekend, and they're the ones who paid for my ticket and who brought me here. So I'll be here all told like 5-6 days. And but this is if I'm a disciplined party member, this weekend I'm supposed to go out and show myself for picture opportunities and all these crazy things that politicians do. And I was just so grateful to God that I wasn't there and I had an excuse. And so, President.
During the Sandinista regime and the problems that were created with the Contras, the Sandinista government used to estimate that 40% of the income was being spent on the war effort. Yet, in spite of that, there were schools being opened and all kinds of health care was put in play. The war effort is no longer an issue, apparently. And at least the health programs are disappearing. One would have thought that with the money that should have been liberated as a result of the United States backing off, and one would have thought that the kind of soft support, at least the Sandinistas were offering the Chamorro government, that one could have sustained the medical advances and maybe even provided other kind of social benefits. What happened to all the money that was supposed to be available with the demise of the Contras?
You sound like a Nicaraguan. That's the question people ask themselves in Nicaragua. Yeah, that's exactly what the people say. Look, there's no war. All of this expenditure for defense, which was legitimate and all is not being used. We have the smallest military contingent in Central America, smaller than Costa Rica, smaller than the Guardia Rural is the army now, and all of these things. And schools are closing down. They are now. You now have to pay. Conseguime un poquito de agua, por favor, un poquito, una cosa. I get thirsty, I know, when I... like, the number of students went from 500,000 to 1 million in the revolution. In spite of all our shortcomings, we doubled the population of students. Now we're going back to 500,000. Schools that were built, what is happening also is that many teachers have been let go. Because of the adjustment requirements of the IMF and the structural adjustment and the World Bank and all that. So they're cutting down on teachers, you cut down on teachers and not provide even money for the maintenance of the schools. So what you find in many schools, you go into a classroom, gracias, you may find that there may be one chair or no chair left. And the remains of chairs have been used as firewood. And the windows will be broken. And people sitting on the floor. You will find some students coming to school with a little something to sit on. And you find others on go because they said you have to have a uniform. And they may have no money, the parents, for that uniform. Or because now each student has to pay the equivalent of $2. Well, now it's a little bit under $2. But our families are large. And some people have 4 students. And so that means $8. And when you are out of a job, and when life is so expensive, perhaps even more expensive than Canada, energy is not perhaps, it's more expensive than like electricity, more expensive than anywhere in the world. And we went from being the cheapest country in Latin America to being the most expensive in Latin America. And then the unemployment level is almost 70%. So that also contributes to the inability of parents to adequately prepare children for school. So in everything you are going back. And there was, remember that this government went in office with the promise that because the threat was clear right on the eve of the elections, Bush was saying, if the people in Nicaragua elect the Sandinistas again, the war will continue, and we will declare the election a fraud. Right on the eve, the threatening with the continuation of the war. Okay, but not only that, there were promises too. But if, on the other hand, they vote for the American candidate, there will be peace, which is so important, but also jobs. And the unemployment level with the revolution was never more than like 20%. But the idea was there would be money to develop the country more, and the spare parts to get the industries that have folded because the embargo prevented the bringing of the spare parts that you needed for American-made machinery and all that. That all would be supplied. But none of that happened. What happened is just the opposite. The World Court had ruled when it condemned the United States for its policy against Nicaragua and gave the strongest condemnation in the history of world justice against the government of the United States. The World Court also ordered the United States to make reparations, to pay for damages occasioned to Nicaragua because of that war. And I tried on 2 occasions. I wrote to Schultz, my counterpart in the American government. And on both occasions he responded to me. It took about 3 months each time, but he responded saying that there was nothing to talk about, that he did not want to meet. So I went back to the World Court at The Hague, and the president of the World Court said to me, okay, Father, present us your quantification of the damages. And so I went back to my same team at Harvard University, Professor Chase, and at Oxford University, Ian Brownling, and at the University of Paris, Pelé, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America, ICLA, and made up a team for the quantification. By the time Mrs. Chamorro came to office, the quantification was $17 billion. $17 billion. And the United States put great pressure on Mrs. Chamorro to withdraw this issue from the World Court. The World Court already had decided that the United States had to pay, so the issue is not whether it should pay or not pay. The issue now was exactly how much and in what manner should the payment be done. That's what the court was talking about now. Because the United States did not want to do it bilaterally with us, we took it back to the court. But now Mrs. Chamorro is in office, and they say, tell the court not to get involved, not to continue involvement of itself in that issue. We will settle this with you in the way that friends settle differences. We are friends. We will give you handsomely, but we don't want to be embarrassed by having the court tell us. And so Mrs. Chamorro, went back to review her Emily Post manual, and she went on television saying it's bad manners. She says for friends to settle things in court. We friends deal bilaterally. The United States is our friend, and I'm ordering today our representative at The Hague to withdraw the compensation proceedings or reparation proceedings. Before she did that, I went on television, radio. I say, Mrs. Chamorro, don't fall in the trap. They will never. But anyway, she fell. And so and then the promise was, if she did that, millions would be coming in immediately. No, really, it's unbelievable, the shamelessness. But of course, nothing came. And Nicaragua is there a basket case for country. Totally. The president and Michael Higgins went to Nicaragua 2 years ago. Yeah, and they were telling me about how sad things looked. And they were talking about the high incidence of prostitution that was readily noticeable around the Intercontinental Hotel, that was not noticeable before. But today is that prostitution situation and other terrible situations right in that hotel. Not too long ago, about 4 months ago, this lady is a friend of mine. She's an Italian lady working in Nicaragua as an internationalist, working with street children, which is another phenomenon. 19,000 children roam the streets of Managua and have no home. And this lady, this Italian teacher, who now is living there with us, she's walking, and she's very inquisitive. And there was this very cute little girl about maybe 5 years old, who was holding a baby. And all told there were 3. And they waved at her and did not ask for anything. And she wanted to investigate, what is this phenomenon? What are they? They are not here to beg. Why are they here like that? And then she went to inquire for some person who sells lottery. You know, the lottery thing. He says, what is this thing? Who are these children? Oh, he says, they live there, and pointed to the bushes in front of the hotel. And behind the bushes there was a great big tire, like a used tire, like of a tractor. You know, they're kind of tall and big. The children lived inside the tire, and they have some rags in there, and they go in there and take shelter inside the tire. And then the Italian lady asked, how come they did not ask for anything? Do they eat? And the man who sells the lottery said, yes, they eat. And she says, how do they eat? He says, there's a very kind soul in the kitchen of the Intercontinental. And he's a cook. But he collects leftovers, and he carries to them and to other poor people. So she wanted to pursue it further, and she went inside the kitchen of the hotel, and she investigated. She's an outstanding, unbelievable modern-day saint. To me, like a saint. A lady, like maybe, I don't know, she's a young woman, maybe 40 or 45. To me, it's like and full of life. And she came to Nicaragua, she discovered the children in the street, and she wanted to enter that whole phenomenon. She went to most of the children live in markets. You know, we have these huge markets. And why do you think they live in markets? Because there you have perishables, and much is thrown out, and they live from that. And so you have maybe 5,000 in one market, 8,000 in another, and they naturally by themselves divide by ages, because the sex abuse is rampant. And they are afraid of that kind of situation, so they divide by sex and by age. And she wanted to enter into relationship with, to know these people. And you know, they're little thieves. And they smell glue. This is a kind of a drug. So glue sniffers, thieves, gangs. And she was making an approach. She spent a week, and they realized that this woman is not ordinary. She wants to come into our world. And this whole initial approach developed into a little fight there in the street, where she even was throwing rotten oranges at them, oranges, and like a little war. And this ended up in a reconciliation and friendship. And she is like the queen for all the little thieves, and they call her mother. And some other person came along and gave her a little farm where she now lives with 20, but she continues to go there, and she knows that whole phenomenon better than anyone in Nicaragua. And she's someone who came from abroad. Her language is Italian and Spanish are very similar, and in no time, I mean, you know, she from the beginning could understand, and in no time she could relate. But this is another thing that has developed infinitely more than the last time you came to Nicaragua 2 years ago. Things are really rapidly deteriorating. I say Nicaragua is a basket case, and those responsible for that predicament prefer to look the other way and just have left it that way. Adelante. Dímelo en español, yo lo voy a traducir. Correcto. She's asking, in this present-day Nicaraguan situation. What is the role of the FSLN? Is it dormant, or and if it is, does it plan to wake up and help to reverse this reversal, or to bring things up again a bit more? Well, that's what we've been talking about. Eso es lo que más o menos les he estado diciendo, que ha estado muy pasivo, pero que ahorita en este Congreso se va a decidir si el Frente Sandinista se despierta y asume nuevamente una beligerancia en defensa de los intereses de los pobres. I'm saying that I told her that this is what we've been talking about really, that in this next Congress, the main issue is, should the Frente once again assume a militant role in defense of the rights of the poor? Or should it continue to behave in a manner that the poor people refer to as co-government? How you doing?
I'd like to, if you explain to us the role of the church. It sounds to me like Daniel Ortega is a liberation theologian compared to some of the people in power. I just wonder what role is the church taking? Is there a huge split?
Well, the church is the people of God. The people of God is the majority. And the church is saying, get on with our duty to defend justice and life. But you refer to the church hierarchy.
Are they split too? Or they?
No, they're not split. They're very much united. The hierarchy. Yeah. No, the hierarchy is united. and very much united with the Vatican. And it's, I'm not talking about doctrine, I'm talking about politics. Yeah, it's very much united. No, it's sad. No, I said that the church is not divided, it's united. But it's not united in the defense of the rights of the poor. They were very much united lately on the very historical task of the construction of the cathedral. There was almost a split because of the shade of one of the paints that was used. But they resolved that problem and they imported from Mexico some other thing. I think they're united again. Yeah. Look, it's a caricature, but it is totally ungermane. It has nothing to do with anything. It's totally irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. It has nothing to do with anything at all.